Board of Directors meeting on the April Fool's Day, April 1st. I was going to adjourn the meeting early and call April Fool's, but we'll have to go through the regular meeting.
No, okay.
All right.
Do we still get paid?
Call to order. Let's see.
April Fools.
All right. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call. Mr. Croco.
Here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Mr. Parker. Here. Mr. Allred here. All right, item C. Approval of the agenda.
I'll second it. Andrew made a motion.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay, so understood.
And I'll second
Any comments? All righty, all those in favor?
it. Aye.
All those opposed? Votes unanimous for approval of the agenda. All right, item 2, community announcements, public comments, or items not on the agenda.
You should have turned your mic on.
Oh.
Here.
I'm not tech savvy, I'm sorry.
That's why I wanted to catch it.
Good afternoon. As most of you know, I'm Dean Sost. There's a situation with me that's been going on now ever since I got notice from Dave Van Hoy in regards to his hangar. I've been renting a portion of his hangar for about 15 years now. And I've never had any comments or gripes or any misgivings about being able to rent, not lease, but rent a portion of the hangar. But evidently, since Director Hansen has come back on the board, evidently it seems that now I have to be forced off the airport. And I would request that this be put on the agenda for further discussion in the next meeting.
We'll take it into consideration. Scott?
Yeah, that's entirely within the discretion of the board. I would know that as far as Van Hoy goes, it is a potential litigation matter. And Mr. Sost has his right as a member of the public to speak to the board at this point in time. So, but whether or not the board decides to put it as an agenda item is entirely up to them.
Well, the amount of discussion in this matter is going to require more than 3 minutes. That's why I asked that it be put on the agenda so we can have a face-to-face long discussion about what's going on. Because what it is that I've been on this airport since 1978, and I've never had this kind of backlash on anything. So I respectfully request that we do this next board meeting in closed session too.
Well, we can't do it in closed session.
So after we have to do it in open session?
Yeah, there's no legal basis under the Brown Act to bring a third party in, especially one who's a potential litigant. It's specifically disallowed by the Brown Act.
So we will, as far as I'm concerned, we will take this under advisement and decide if we're going to allow it to be on the agenda at next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, item 3, consent agenda. A and B, minutes of regular meeting, and check register.
We'll take the agenda items A and B.
I'll second.
A second. Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Unanimous decision. Item 3, A and B are all approved. Action items. Resolution to amend board policy 100, ethics and conflict of interest.
Right, we brought that back to the board at this meeting. Previously briefly discussed that we need to do some housekeeping on the verbiage there. I believe we have that addressed. It's principally realigning to be consistent with law and policy and enumerating the restrictions and personnel that are doing the Form 700 filings.
That's close.
So, if I may expand on that a little bit, we're not changing any of the designated employees. What is happening is the FPPC is starting to have more counties do online filings. So for instance, one of my clients is in Lake County in Northern California, and for the last 4 or 5 years, all my filings for them have been online, which is very, very convenient. So we're starting to see this spread across the state, and one of the other changes they're making is now the place of filing will be with the district. So Lynn will keep your original Form 700s in your files here at the district instead of sending those to the county. So that is the change we're making. This is coming at the request of the county. And so my other agencies in Kern County are doing the same thing.
But does this mean that we're filing, the way I understood it, we'll still do it the same way we've been doing it all year? Hard copies?
Yep. And you'll
Filed
give those, you'll give those to Lynn, and then Lynn will keep them. As you may know, we keep them in your files for 5 years, and then after 5 years, they're destroyed. So, so Lynn will just keep, instead of sending the original to the county and keeping a copy at the district, she will keep the original at the district now.
Okay. A motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution amending board policy 100 ethics and conflict of interest.
Second.
We have a first by Jim, a motion to approve, and Mr. Croco.
This is pretty routine.
Any other questions? Any comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. Item A. Item B.
So the
Yes.
California Special District Association is looking for a board member, actually looking for nominations, not a board member. 2-year term. It'll involve,
Was it 2 or 3 year?
maybe it was 3.
And I just read it. You could be right. There's a commitment.
26 to 28.
Okay. 2 years.
And the commitment will involve about a half dozen trips a year to Sacramento and participating in one committee, which would be another 4 to 5 trips to Sacramento. There is no arm twist on this. The board can choose to not nominate a member of the board.
Yeah, and I'm going to make that recommendation. I think CSDA is worthy, but it does take a lot of time involved in travel and being involved with it. Those are kind of the minimum numbers.
That's what's highlighted in the expectations.
Right.
Do we have a board member that is interested?
Not I.
Not I.
No.
Or general manager.
And I will tell you, I think we can use time better than 27 days in Sacramento, which is what I figure it would be with travel day before, travel day after.
We have no,
I'll make a motion that we do not nominate.
we have no nominee.
We have no nominee.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any comment? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It carries, item B carries, we have no nominee for the seat. Reports. Director of Administration.
Good afternoon. These are the financials for the month of February 2025. Bank balance increased 360,000. Operating revenue, we are at 68%. Operating expenses, we're at 62%. Fuel sales, we were at 128,000 gallons. AR, still the same two on there that we've had, High Desert Wireless. Still reaching out to them to try to make them make a payment. They have about $201 on the account, so hoping
They've been pretty regular, haven't they?
they've been making like $100 payment. So we're still trying to. I know we're so close. And then Dragon Aviation, as you know, you guys will be discussing further in closed session. Some more to come on them. Fitness Center at 682 members. Did decrease, but that's just because of the Air Force. They were here in January, and then so the members came off in February. So that was when it was the decrease. That's the only reason why, was due to the Air Force membership. And that's all I have for today.
All right, thank you. Barry? Director of Operation.
Good afternoon. For our operations numbers, during tower hours, we did see an increase, which is in line with the increases we've seen recently, about that 9% increase in operations. Biggest increase was in military operations. One of the things that the operations department is starting to do is a little bit of research into some of the changes. What is causing some of these month-over-month changes? Sometimes we'll notice we have days like today where we have one flight in and out of here. And obviously those are more closely due to weather, but we're also starting to look at our increases in military operations and seeing if that, especially as we get into these budget cycles in July, if it warrants any increase in either operations personnel, more training, things along that nature. One question I did have for the board with the operations counts is if there's anything of interest that you would like me to add into these reports as we start to do that analysis and start to look at where our numbers are changing, where they're increasing, where we're noticing noticeable differences between the operations counts year over year, or if it's just, hey, we are improving, hey, we're not improving.
It might be interesting. I just wonder what a report would look like that, well, due to winds on the first.
Well,
Is it worth the effort?
what we would do is, so for instance, if in February of last year versus February of this year, if we had a marked number, if we saw a 25% increase, a sudden boom in it, is it because we had a military exercise? Is it because we had very wet season last year? Or is this genuine organic growth? Is the airport actually growing, or is it due to other factors? So those are the types of things. If we have anything notable and not, hey, it was windy on April 1st, and try to keep it from being mundane, significant causal factors to have affected operations either month over month or year over year. Another thing that, so I've been here for about 2 years where we've been really rigorously starting to look into these numbers and what's affecting it. We're also starting to go back now 2 years and seeing how that growth is affected over the last 2 years versus just, hey, February of last year, this is what it looked like.
I don't even know if this is a fair question. Is there a percentage of flight operations versus fuel sales?
That is one thing that we want to start looking at. So there is a direct correlation that we've noticed in the fuel sales with the military operations, but we haven't been able to dig into it too much with the civilian. Some of the things that I've been working on, as well as working with our fire tankers and maps specifically to market Mojave as a potential place for them to come, refuel, let them rest, re-energize, whatever it is that they need to do during intense fire seasons. And so with that comes those fuel sales, especially, a DC-10 takes a touch more gas than a C-172. So we're hoping that with those marketing efforts and increasing those operations, that will lead to more fuel sales. And we have seen it on the military side. I haven't been able to dig into the civilian side quite yet.
Is it possible, and I'm just saying this for you, I'm not looking for a report, to run those numbers now, just to see what, if there's a percentage of gallons versus operations?
Absolutely.
Just to see what it is.
Absolutely. So I will link up with Harold's not in here today, but I will link up with Harold and see what that looks like, and Carrie as well with the financial. Is that Sonia that does this? We'll link up afterwards and
Yeah.
see, you know, what does that growth look like? Not just how many planes have touched the pavement, but actually what it's translating into financially
There's a
for us.
correlation, I'm sure, to some degree, but is it significant to focus on and maybe have gas day or
I was gonna suggest, in the past, I know when I was on the board before, we did discounts on like Plane Crazy Saturday. Is there any data to show that our gallonage was a lot higher on those days? Or any kind of special events that we had for the civilian side?
I would have to check with Director of Fuels. I do know recently when we went through the rehab of policy 700, we had put in the ability for the general manager to be able to offer for special events.
Right.
I don't know how much that we've been able to utilize that. One of them was MEFI. We had authorized a percentage of discount that would be available, was one particular event. But I don't know, since we've put in that language into the policy, that we've been able to utilize it.
So that may prevent us from doing it?
No, we're not prevented. We just haven't had the opportunity to engage that
It allows
yet.
the CEO to give those discounts without coming to the board.
Well, I know,
for
but I
authorization.
think that was in there in the past.
There was I can't remember exactly what the language was, but there was some preventative language on what he could and could not authorize for special events for discounts. And when we had redone the operations policy, we had that language amended to give
Okay,
him
so
some
there's
authorization.
guidance in there.
Yeah, I remember before when I was on the board, 4 or 5 years ago, they had to come to the board each time and ask before the event. And timing didn't work out sometimes to get a meeting in before the event. So I think that's why that evolved into allowing the CEO to do that.
So I will definitely do some more research into those numbers, see if there's any of those direct correlations, and provide those reports as it comes available. We are slightly off-shifted. Unfortunately, I was out on leave last month. So our next report will be next board meeting to catch us up on the March numbers.
There's no pressure from this board member. Was just curious. If you just find some formula that you can just throw out every month, note it, go back and look a year or 2 years and go, yes, we do, with traffic increase, see fuel sales increase. I'm no military, because that's kind of what they do here, and they burn a lot of.
That's nice.
I would say if you just find something interesting, something you come across or would like to put in, just put it in the report.
Absolutely. Okay, I will make sure to add those notes in, and I will see you again in 2 weeks with March's numbers.
Thanks, Ariel.
Great,
Of course.
thank you.
Yeah. Linda, you're up, Chief Executive Officer.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. No update on the hangars, but actually got some, what I perceive as exciting highlights to share with you. Had an opportunity to be at the recent SETP conference down in Antelope Valley. The connections there are priceless as we
Yes.
continue to grow our community involvement in this somewhat small flight test community. The time being spent at the LA Economic Development Corporation is starting to show signs of paying off. We're part of a greater aerospace valley that does not adhere to a county line. So our business interests are broad. And yes, we're focused in East Kern, but there are resources in the northern part of LA County that we absolutely partner with. Things like our mission partners down at Plant 42 and Edwards, Lockheed, Northrop, Boeing, et cetera. So these are all healthy ties that we get to continue to exploit. And then the rare opportunity at the Spring Summit that we did help sponsor. So we had a small team at the Antelope Valley Edge Spring Summit. where I got to meet Fifi. Fifi is Colonel Malachowski. Malachowski. She was the first female Thunderbird pilot in 2006. Her story, I won't bore you with all the details. I would just offer was absolutely compelling about a woman who challenged a very, very solid glass ceiling and broke through it to become a teammate on one of the most integral teams out there. But what was very valuable for me as being so fortunate to be in this chair is the discussion she fostered on teamwork and team building and how critically it is important to be Thunderbird 3 to understand that you're number 3 in a team.
Yeah.
And I'll bother you with one or two of her quick stories. One is she said when she finally was selected for the Thunderbirds, and she gets out there and shows up at Nellis, and she was an Eagle driver, so an F-15 person.
Yeah.
And she's all excited about getting in that red, white, and blue Viper. And she's about to go start that mission. And they informed her she can't touch the airplane.
Oh.
And said, not until you meet every member of the Thunderbird team, get to know who their spouses are, how many children they have, where they live, you know, get into building that team philosophy. And the other brief story that touched me in being very aviation related, I think you can relate to this too. She said her very first flight after this was done, she walks out there and we're all pilots. We know what we do when we walk up to an airplane for the first time. We always do a walk around.
Sure.
Always. And she starts doing her walk around and her crew chief comes over and says, what do you think you're doing, Captain? She says, well, doing my walk around. And he says, your walk around's been done. And your equipment is all pre-flighted and done. And your emergency gear is pre-flighted and done. Your teammates do that for you. And if you're going to do a walk around, it is telling your teammates that you don't trust them.
Hard habit to break.
It is, right? but and that team, that very close-knit team, very compelling stories that she brought forward. Sadly, late in her Air Force career as an 06, she became extremely ill. And it's a sad case of things that happen in life. And she's got about 2 years of her life that have disappeared due to a severe brain disease. But she is now fully capable and she is speaking publicly and absolutely one of the very finest public speakers I've ever heard. So Fifi was a lot of fun. And,
Great.
and then a last thing, and we'll come to you with a formal resolution requesting this when we get dates, times, and things like that nailed down. The International Test and Evaluation Association had a conference. They have 2 major conferences a year. One of them is always this time of year in Las Vegas. It's their test and instrumentation workshop. And it focuses really on, let's call it just the younger demographic in the RDT&E universe, both the engineering side as well as the non-technical side of test and evaluation. With the federal government cutting all travel for federal personnel, they simply could not sustain it. Now, by the way, ITEA is a nonprofit. So they were looking at, is there some way that we could possibly host a modified conference in an area that would allow for military installations to do local area travel? So if you're within the local area, I, as a commander, can approve your travel. It's unfunded, but I basically just give you a day off work if you're willing to go to this conference somewhere else. So we looked far and wide for a location that might be in the local area travel of 542, Edwards,
You can say it.
Shauna Lake, and Knock WD. And if you did the Venn diagram on those, the concentric circles all seem to match up at Mojave here in Spaceport.
Yes.
So we've done some what ifs. It would be zero cost to us to just provide them the Stewart Center. The dates they're talking about can be deconflicted. They'll absorb all costs. They do all the labor and all the effort. So again, we'll be coming to the board with a more formal resolution, looking for that. I really think this is going to be an absolute coup for Mojave and Spaceport. And the fact that speakers at that conference can all just walk out of their office and go over to the Stewart Center and talk about National Test Pilot School and dropping the hypersonic system in Strato off of Rock. It's just, this will be an exciting thing, assuming the board concurs with that resolution when we bring it.
Estimated head count?
They usually in Las Vegas have somewhere around 300 to 400 people. Now, I imagine it would be about half of that.
Still a big crowd.
But it's a good crowd, and they're all focused on the RDT of the universe. And many of them, based on the call when the idea was offered forward, have very little idea of what goes on at Mojave.
How interesting. Yeah.
So the opportunity to share the story
Absolutely.
with that demographic, I see that as
Perfect.
being a remarkably successful moment.
We used to have an inside joke, whatever, when, this was when Stu was here, and, did they say the words? It'd be maybe giving a group a tour or something to that effect. And that was, I had no idea.
Exactly, you hear that. Yeah,
So,
Well, the idea is getting out there.
good.
I had an individual at the executive conference last night come up to me and say, was taking a different way home from work because of some freeway closures, and I was driving past N on 14, and I looked and went, wait a minute, there's a big Mojave sign up there. So yeah, we're above the freeway. And, the word is absolutely getting out there. So one apology for the board. I said I'd bring you that action plan this week. It's not ready for prime time. So need a few more days to do the production polishing on it before we bring you a finalized product. Expectation is next week. And subject to your questions.
No questions, it's just comments, and what Jimmy was saying about, I had no idea. That's been going on for years. And I was telling Lynn this morning, I don't know why, but I just have such good feelings about, and I believe it's coming to pass. You're making that happen. Thank you.
Well, it's a team.
but we have a great billboard. But again, unless you get a tour or talk to people here, you just see our billboard, so airliners parked out there, which is really
Right.
a billboard. But it doesn't really tell the story about
Oh,
cool
no,
stuff. So
that's right.
You're absolutely
I
right.
think that would be a great one. And I would be willing to support it to some degree of just advertising. If it need be, the facility obviously is worth something, so.
Great.
I have, how are we involved, or how involved is China Weapons Center with us? And, like the Air Force Base and stuff.
So Channel Lake. Members just tend to notches, but Channel 8, they're here often, as are our Navy friends from down south, Navy and Marines and multiple assets,
And
by
Lamar,
a considerable amount of gas. And you're right, Lamar as well. To tie that back, and I don't know if it was your attention to this IKEA thing, Channel Lake is one of the strong participants in IKEA. So I expect we'll get several of their younger talent down here. If you are a young engineer, this is the perfect low threat environment to do your first publishing, to do a presentation, get in front of peers and colleagues and get that kind of experience and exposure. So it's very valuable to them. So yeah, Title 8, Edwards, not so much. I happened to be at the state's Soldier, Airman, and Civilian of the Year banquet Saturday in San Diego. And while at the banquet Saturday, the commander of the 146th used to be called the Hollywood Guard. They fly the MAP C-130s. And so they're out of Channel Islands. He asked what would be the possibility, and Ariel will probably shoot me, but maybe stabbing will be more fun. I don't know. Would there be a possibility of us designating part of a taxiway or maybe our VFR runway or something as an assault strip so they can practice assault landings at a strange field? They have one at Plant 42. It's on a taxiway, and it gets considerable use, and that all boils down to more touches. More touches is more traffic, and every so often those touches turn into a Park 130 that drinks up some gas and gets back on its journey to Channel Islands. So the military collaboration is real and growing consistently.
Good.
Ariel has done a fabulous job working very closely with numerous military exercise planners. Mojave fits into, just trying to choose words smartly here so we don't classify things, but it fits very well into the new strategy that the military is under going forward into what might the next near-peer conflict look like. This becomes a somewhat modified air base environment for military deployments. They can come in here and have a 10,000 plus foot runway, access to fuel and facilities, the kind of things they might get at a forward area base, yet far enough away from an organic military base that they have to demonstrate those essential field skills. So Ariel, I think we have, 6 of these coming up? 3 more. So it'll roll up to be 5 or 6 total, 5 total.
And they're what, a week long, 2 weeks long?
Round numbers, about a week long of the actual exercise. There'll be an advon team and a tear down team here for about an additional week. Those are all kind of flexible and frangible numbers. It looks like one of them, we'll see what happens, but we may get a complement of Typhoons on the ramp. That would be kind of fun. Eurofighters. We'll see.
What do they actually do during the exercise when they come in?
It's basically wargaming, but their internal quote combat operations they do behind a closed door.
Of course. You know, years ago, they had exercises here. I mean, decades ago.
Mhm.
And it was combining military forces, Army, Marines, Air Force, and they were sleeping along the taxiways and had fuel cells out there, which I want them to buy fuel from us. But anyway, it was interesting, helicopters and aircraft. And
They do buy fuel from us, and they most of them are in local lodging, but some do stay here.
Mhm,
It's all based on the nature of what the fight looks like.
right,
Did also have some just superficial conversations Saturday with some of the Army Guard side.
right,
That's talking about looking for additional training opportunities that aren't walking through the same chunk of dirt at
Right.
Los Alamitos.
yeah,
You know, and giving them that offer that, oh, dirt is something we have.
yes, we
And-
do, and sometimes it blows that way.
So,
I've got a
So
question.
these are opportunities we have.
That's wonderful.
And this may be directed more to Aaron, but how does this, what is the impact on our tenants with this? Is it acceptable? I'm just, our tenants are our priority.
Absolutely.
And so
So
operations,
when I work through the early stages of these different exercises that are coming up, one of the biggest things that I make sure I emphasize for all of our military partners that come through is one, that it cannot impact general aviation operations. We need to remain a civilian public use airport.
Right.
So that is heavily emphasized. If that doesn't align with their mission, unfortunately, we can't shut down the airfield. The other thing that I do emphasize, and this is one of the ways it does impact attendance, is we cannot shut down runway 30. If we have an operation, and I've been able to deconflict for one with Straddle Launch and make sure that that worked, and that was just coordination. The other thing is that it does usually make some spaces of the airport unavailable. For instance, the Stewart Center is then not available for use by our mission partners or the gym while we have these military exercises. But I do emphasize low impact. So for instance, when we had the Air Force here a few weeks ago, I guess it was over a month ago now, a couple people came by and asked me when the Air Force is coming, and they're already here. So we do try very hard to ensure, we're still a public use airport. The airport is still usable. We're not closing down any particular services. And if there is a potential for a testing event to happen while the military is here, that's communicated and said, hey, our large runway is unavailable for these times. Can you work with that?
you mentioned the gym.
Yes, so the gym uses the Stewart Event Center when it's not being rented out for basketball,
Gym
pickleball.
portion.
The gym portion itself is fine.
still-
Yes,
I'm looking for any revenue impact.
there should
It's actually
not.
positive.
Yeah,
Well,
The
okay,
military
that's what I want to
pays
hear.
to be here. So they do rent the Stewart Center,
Okay.
they do buy gas.
and it is a significant
Yeah, and-
amount of money when they come through. One of our military exercises was a little over $100,000 in 2 weeks. So they do rent spaces from us and they pay for those spaces, land, the Stewart Center, large aircraft transient parking, as well as any other spaces they may use, such as conference rooms. They pay the airport based on our fixed rates that anybody would.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Of course.
And frankly, this is a cute story going back to the first one of these we did here a few months ago. So our mission partners here actually have helped out the military.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that happened, and if you think of it, if we were at, say, a forward base somewhere in an island destination and they needed something they didn't have, they'd look to the local economy to figure it out. They have to. Well, when your loadmaster finds out that the forklift should be in the center of the load, you don't have a forklift to offload your cargo. So
Yeah.
our mission partners were able to show up with a forklift so that they could unload their forklift so they could unload their cargo.
Plan ahead.
That's, I guess I say interesting, cool.
It is.
And we're allowed to provide that because we do have great assets out here and we are a bit remote.
Right.
And it works with our existing tenants, which makes me very happy.
The tenants, my perception, talking to the jet trains of the world, Morris's of the world, they love it.
They do. And
Kudos, Ariel.
when they get out of the military, they may look at going to work for some of these companies.
They just might.
All righty. Any board committees? No, we have no board committees. Director comments on items not on the agenda.
I have something. Plain Crazy Saturday will be held on April 19th, which is actually Easter weekend. But our speaker is Barbara Schultz, and most of you know who she is. She's going to talk about women's role in aviation history. She really wanted to do it last month because that was Women's History Month. But anyway, I told her we were doing memorial for Chuck Coleman. But April 19th, she will be presenting many of the women in aviation history that weren't as well known as Pancho Barnes and and Amelia Earhart. However, she did write some books about them, and she will have books here to sell. But Barbara's an interesting gal in that when she does research, she does research. She really digs into it. So the talk will be at 11 right here in the boardroom. And I hope everybody can make it because she is an interesting gal. And she's married to Phil Schultz, as Jim was saying. I knew Phil Schultz for years. I didn't know his wife. So anyway, that's Barbara. Thank you.
If I may.
Yes.
Comment that you reminded me of from Fifi.
Yeah.
Is, talking about women in aviation, and the impacts have been huge.
Oh,
We all
yeah.
know that over time. But it has been an uphill battle, especially based on what era. She was told from early in her career as a pilot, she started flying at age 12, to remember that she's just a woman and things out there that you want to do are hard. And when she applied for the Thunderbirds, after hearing this her whole life, she needed an endorsement from her commander, 06 commander. And he said, well, this is really hard and you are just a woman.
Oh, yeah.
So she was frustrated and did what a good fighter pilot would do, grabbed her packet, went over to the club and had a beer. And the wing commander, general officer, came up to her as she tells the story at the bar and said, how's your Thunderbird packet going? And she said, I bought it. I said, well, it's hard and I am just a woman.
Oh, no.
And the general looked at her and said, don't let anyone else ever direct what your destiny is. And she got a letter of endorsement from the general, not the colonel, and became Thunderbird 3. So
That's great. She needed to hear from my mother, who I was told always, you're just a girl. You can't do that. And this was from my brothers. And my mother said, yes, you can. And she says, anything you want to do, you can do it. And you can do whatever the boys do. And I did. So thank God I had the mother I did. And I met her too. She's delightful.
very impressive.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any more comments? All righty, at this time, we will proceed to closed session.
The board like me to stay.
Please.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.